Hey y'all, it's Erica Parker. I am super excited to have y'all back on my channel and thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going over the most common questions that I'm getting right now in real estate. So stay tuned and thanks for joining me again. So first of all, I've got a lot of questions about people using a buyer's agent. A lot of people that, especially first-time home buyers, are thinking that they're asking, can I save money by not using a buyer's agent? By just going directly to the listing agent and saying, hey, I want to buy this. Now, here's what I'm going to say. The listing agent has already negotiated with the seller on what that seller is willing to pay the listing agent. The listing agent then puts it on the MLS and it gives a certain percentage that they're willing to pay to a buyer's agent. And they agree with the seller on what they're going to pay the buyer's agent. Now, if you don't use a buyer's agent, that doesn't necessarily mean that the listing agent is going to discount their commission in order for you to get a better deal. So one, the listing agent has to agree as well to discount that overall commission that is going to go, that the seller is going to pay. Now, as a listing agent, if I get a buyer that's coming in that is unexperienced or inexperienced, that is not really knowledgeable, even if they've done one or maybe even two transactions in their lifetime, I'm not necessarily going to discount the full 3% off for a buyer, for them not using a buyer's agent, because there are certain things that I'm going to have to hold their hand on. I'm going to have to make sure that they know exactly what to do with their lender. I'm going to have to make sure that they get their homeowner's insurance in place, that they make sure that they get their inspection done. I don't have to sit there and tell them what to negotiate, but I do have to kind of hold their hand when it comes to understanding what that process is. So I'm not necessarily going to discount my entire 3% that would go to a buyer's agent if I find a buyer that doesn't want to be represented. Now, there's also the possibility of doing an intermediary where the listing agent actually becomes an intermediary, which means they cannot give advice to either the seller or the buyer. They can only facilitate the transaction. They can tell them what their options are and allow them to make their decision based on that. They can't say, this is what I suggest you do. So that is something that you can look into if you want, but I highly recommend having a buyer's agent represent you, because they know the contracts, they know what to look for, they know the types of inspections you need to get, and they know how to negotiate on your behalf on all the terms. And if the market is really busy, if you may need to go over what the comps look like, all of these things are something that a buyer's agent can provide you. So it is very essential, I think, to be represented. And honestly, it's kind of like going into a lawsuit. You can represent yourself if you go to court, but you don't know all the proceedings, you don't know all the rules, and it's in the end better if you have a lawyer on your side in a lawsuit that knows all of these things and can negotiate and can question, or whatever the case may be, on your behalf and represent you on your behalf. Same thing here in a real estate transaction. This is a big deal. It's you're likely in your lifetime. So make sure that you have someone representing you on your side. Now, the next question I get, and I want to make sure I have a list right here in front of me, so I want to make sure I read it, is how the process is different in Texas. Now, this is because I've gotten a lot of buyers are relocating from outside of Texas, or have relocated, or maybe renting, and now they're looking to actually buy. So some of the things that are different about Texas is we do have a specific, certain states, you just have to make an offer. It's like a letter, and you just have to strike through things if you're negotiating it. Well, in Texas, you don't strike through, you rewrite the contract and you counter that way. And so in Texas, that's one thing. The next thing is in especially California, there is such thing as some called an escalation clause. In Texas, most brokers won't accept an escalation clause. So what buyers a lot of times do when they're coming from California is they'll tell their agent, hey, I want an escalation clause. The agent, if they give the agent a specific wording for the escalation clause, then the agent is able to put that in there. But the other agent, the listing agent, is likely not going to accept it as written. What probably will happen is that the listing agent will then counter at that amount that the escalation clause technically follows through on. So if it's 5,000 over the highest offered price, then say it's 150,000, then they would counter your escalation clause at 155,000. So that's how usually it gets addressed in this situation. But just be aware the clause, the weirdly written, is not usually by most brokerages. The next thing is an option to terminate. So in a lot of other states, there isn't a general option to terminate for whatever reason. A lot of times there are contingencies put on the property, like a due diligence contingency that has to do with inspection related issues that they may find, or a finance contingency. Well, here in Texas, you basically pay for an option period, and it's usually anywhere from 3 to 10 days. I mean, it's not usually a very long option period in this case. And in that time frame, you pay for that. So you pay maybe $25, $30, $50 a day, depending on how active the area is. And you pay for that. And then what you do during that time, you can do your inspections during that time. You can check if you really have any buyer's remorse at that time, and you can back out during that time for whatever reason and get your earnest money back. You don't have to even have a reason. You can just say, hey, I don't like it anymore. I changed my mind. And that can be it. But most other states, you have to actually show like an inspection report that there's these material issues that require that you're scared and you want to back out. That is not the case here in Texas. So just be aware that is something as a buyer that you can actually take advantage of. And the next one is, also wanted to talk about comps. And the reason why I wanted to talk about, yes, in the United States, pretty much uses comps to understand what the value of the home is and what you should likely offer. But I will say I have had several clients from South America that have said that a lot of times homes are priced for negotiation. So they price it and you can walk out with an agreement of $100,000 to $2,000 less. That's not necessarily the case here in the USA. In that, especially in Texas, a lot of times you've negotiated or you've listed the property based on what comps say or what comparables in the area say. So there's not as much negotiation room in that situation. So just be aware of that, in that you're listing it on what you think the home is worth and not necessarily listing it knowing that you're probably going to lose maybe $100,000 off the list price. That's not the case. The next is mortgages. Mortgages here are 30-year mortgages. Recently, that they do technically have a kind of a what's the word, like a bubble payment due at like 5 years, and you have to pay the whole thing off, so just be aware here in the US that is not the case. Whether you can do a 30-year fixed mortgage, you can do a 15-year fixed mortgage, or you can do something along the lines of an adjustable rate mortgage, or actually do a balloon payment or a bubble payment. Sorry, a balloon payment is what I meant to say earlier. A balloon payment of maybe after 5 or 10 years, you have to pay off the remaining amount of the loan. So it gives you time to off the loan if that is the case, or you have to get a new mortgage. So those are all options, here versus in Canada, where it is a balloon payment at the end of a certain term, and it's not a 30-year fixed amortized type of transaction. So that is something I wanted to make y'all aware of. The next thing is, should I buy right now? So this is something that is a very common question now. Should I buy because the interest rates being high, because of pricing being high, and people thinking that there is going to be a dip in prices around the corner. But here's what I'm going to say. If you're waiting on a dip in prices, then you're going to get interest rates going up a little bit too. So either you wait for the dip in prices and you pay more because of the interest rate, or you pay more now because of the interest rate and you actually refinance in the future. So, and you can actually start building equity appreciation now versus 2-3 years from now. And most economists do believe that appreciation is going to go back up, and it may depreciate over the next year or two, but in the long run, it makes more sense for you to buy now and refinance later if you need to on your mortgage and start building that equity, because otherwise you're paying someone else's mortgage. You're paying into a rent, and all of that money is 100% interest. So that's where I'm going to say yes, you may be looking at the interest rate, but as a renter, you're paying 100% interest. So that's when I would say, yes, definitely buy. If you have your own home, then it kind of just depends on what your interest rate is and what your comfort level is on what your new interest payment or your new mortgage payment might be. So it is a time to buy if you want to. You don't want to pay 100% interest if you can buy. And so that would be my recommendation in this situation. Now, next item is do I need a pre-approval letter to look? No, technically a buyer does not need a pre-approval letter. A lot of buyer's agents require them, and it helps to know where you can afford to buy, like what price range, so that you're not falling in love with a $400,000 house and then come to find out you can only really afford a $350,000 house or a $300,000 house. So it's always nice to know where you stand and get pre-approved so that you can also move quickly when you do fall in love with one of those homes. It's very uncommon to allow or to accept an offer that does not have a pre-approval letter already attached or a proof of funds already attached, even in the case of there being more inventory here in Houston than in most other areas. You really don't see an offer without a pre-approval letter. So it's probably, although it's not required, I highly recommend that you get one if you are somewhat serious about buying. Next item, is how do student loans? So your student loans, my thing is, I think I'm cutting out. Sorry, guys. Oh, well. One second. Let me check my internet connection. Apologize. Please stay with me if you can. Well, I would apologize, but hopefully it will stop sometime soon. Hang on one second. Let me see if I go to another screen and back. I don't. Well, I'm going to let go because I don't know why it's malfunctioning right now. But maybe I'll end this broadcast, start a new broadcast shortly to follow up on my last couple of things that I'm getting questions on right now.